What Monaco, I think, meant for me was mainly two things. In the first place, I think the program that I chose prepared me very well in terms of sort of hard technical skills for the job that I knew I wanted post studying. So that's the first thing, and I think the most important thing almost, because this is a transferable skill that I've learned that I have for the rest of my life. Then the second thing that Monaco offered me, which I think is very unique, is sort of the networking ability, right? So I got my job purely and solely because I was in a class at IUM that was taught by the managing director of the company that I ended up working for. My name is Brahm van Schalkwyk. I'm a South African citizen. Originally I come from Paarl, just a little town just outside of Cape Town, the middle of the winelands. So Paarl is where I went to school. Then initially studied at Stellenbosch and then also worked in investment banking in Johannesburg for my first job for 3 years. Following which I was looking for a program that could give me some international exposure firstly. And then also I had become very interested in the private equity space. And when I did my research, I found a program in Monaco at IUM, which is a MSc in finance, but it has specialization in private equity and hedge funds, which is essentially what led me to Monaco. I studied accounting at Stellenbosch, and then with the view of becoming a chartered accountant in South Africa, which is a professional designation equal to a CPA in America. How this works is essentially you do a 3 years work experience traineeship, which is you typically do at a auditing firm, typically one of the big four, Deloitte, EY, etc. But in South Africa, you also have the option of doing that at a sort of outside of auditing, which I then opted for, which landed me at the investment bank, which is Rand Merchant Bank, which I think is the biggest bank in Africa. Or First Rand Group is the biggest bank in Africa, and Rand Merchant Bank is one of the biggest investment banks in South Africa, at least. And how this worked is that it's a 3-year program, but you kind of rotate just different divisions of the bank. So in my 3 years, I spent some time in leverage finance and also corporate finance. And this, for people that know, this would be on the sell side of the process, meaning that you work with private equity funds, but you are always sort of advising them rather than doing the transactions yourself. Private equity is what we call on the buy side. And I realized while doing this that I thought the buy side and private equity would be more interesting for me personally and a better fit. But it's pretty hard, quite frankly, to get into private equity anywhere. And so I thought I needed a bit of an edge in that sense. And that's why I opted to try and study further, specifically in this discipline. And what Monaco offered kind of matched exactly what I was looking for. There are actually quite a few that I at least found that specifically do private equity. I found one at LSE in London. And I mean, quite frankly, for me, it was a matter of my mother kind of spoke French a little bit. So I had grown up with a little bit of French background. And I had been to London before. And I thought, I think Monaco stood out in the sense that it's a little bit different, and I thought that's an interesting place to go. But I mean, could have been. I'm pretty sure LSE's program is also really good. But for me personally, I just opted for Monaco, and I think in hindsight that was the right call. Weather is great. There's a lot of fun things to do in Monaco. It's not a big place at all. It's very, very small, which kind of means, it's a very small kind of tight-knit community, actually. So within a few months of living in Monaco, you kind of know people when you walk on the street. But I think the 10 months that I spent there as part of this program was really, a very, very fun time, but also a very productive time. And I think it gives you exposure to, just some of the best people in the kind of wealth management, asset management industry, for sure, just by the nature of the people that you meet and the networking that you can do, which I think it's probably unrivaled, to be honest. IUM, I think, is an extremely cosmopolitan, sort of very diverse place. I had lots of different nationalities in my cohort. In terms, so firstly, that I think is great in terms of your peers, firstly, that you meet, and they all then also, after graduating, go off and do, weird and wonderful things all across the world, which is fantastic, and it's very good to stay in contact with these people. I think from a networking and sort of careers perspective, I would probably be a fantastic example as someone that for whom Monaco worked out fantastically, because I as part of the MSc in finance, you need to do either a internship or a thesis in your last 3 or 4 months of the course, and I opted for the internship, and I got my internship actually through a professor or a visiting professor at Monaco, Mr. Thomas Etzel, who taught us real estate for 2 weeks, and he is his full-time job is being a managing director at HQ Capital, which is a private equity firm in Germany that's owned by the Quant family, who also own BMW. And this is actually through him I managed to get an internship there as part of my studies, and I was only planning on doing 3 months there to complete my degree, but then ended up actually really liking the job and liking the people and the place, and somehow tricked them into liking me as well. So then I took up permanent employment there at HQ Capital, and I had spent 3 years there until recently when I opted to come study again. But I mean, I could also probably, there's a big chance of me going back to HQ Capital even post my MBA. So yeah, in terms of career, really worked out very well for me, and that's all due to a connection that I made while studying at IUM. I was open to doing that or going back to South Africa. The way that this opportunity came about was just kind of, at the end I couldn't say no, and the offers that I had in South Africa just didn't really compare to what I could get in Germany. In terms of how difficult it is, I think the honest answer there is I don't think it's difficult to get your foot in the door coming from a place like IUM, meaning getting an internship or something like that. I think is pretty not easy, but it's very much doable. I think the difficult part is then converting that into something more permanent and full-time. That really for me was quite tough, especially given the fact that I didn't speak German when I went to Germany, and I think Europe is kind of tough in that regard, because there's a lot of language barriers. I mean, wherever you go, whether it's France or Italy or Germany, you're going to have to at least make a considered effort into sort of learning the language. So that was I would say the 3-month internship for me was great, but it was also tough, and I worked really hard, and I was very glad to just be able to convert that in the end. But it's definitely doable. I mean, if you go to a country where you do speak the language, I think coming from a place like IUM definitely helps you. What I would also say for IUM, which I think is very important, is the actual sort of hard skills that I learned at IUM were really, I would say, almost exceptional, in the sense that, and I also got this feedback at the end of my internship, because I mean, whichever job you start, when you start, you don't really typically know how it really works in practice, right? There will always be a learning curve, and of course there was one, but I think especially the private equity sort of part of the course was very much aligned with how things actually work in practice, and that meant that I arrived at the job already knowing, key terms and sort of the acronyms and the way people talk, which seem like small things, but they make a very big difference. And that just helps you to kind of hit the ground running, if I can put it like that, and not really start completely off the back foot, which I thought was very valuable. I think I did build valuable relationships with people like the program director. So yeah, the answer is that there is as much support as you would want, for sure. I know that some of my classmates were talking to professors on a daily basis, and because our class is 16, 17, I think we were 18 people in the end, that's very doable. And the classes themselves, I would say, are also very interactive. It's not like a lecture where you go and sit and just listen to someone talk. They do expect you to prepare before you come to class, but if you do that, then you definitely, it's more like a dialogue, which again comes back to sort of being close to how things practically work when you enter the workspace, and that I think this is also very valuable. You don't need work experience, for sure. There were lots of, in my small cohort of 18 people, I think there was someone in his early 40s, but there were also a couple of guys who had just finished their bachelor's in 21, and then I was probably 25 years old, 24 years old when I started there, with 3 years of work experience. I think it very much depends what you want to do after. Of course, you're not gonna, graduate from MSc in finance with 0 working experience and then just walk into an executive role at some private equity fund. But I think it's definitely, a very good stepping stone to get a very good first job, if that's what you're looking for. Because of the internship sort of aspect of it, people are typically very, very accommodating, very willing to take on an intern that they know has, the specific sort of technical knowledge that they would require. And then it's up to you, as I said earlier, to convert that internship into what you want it to be. But likewise, even the older guys in the class managed to sort of pivot and leverage off of their previous work experience and move into a role that they had realized that they really wanted. I'm thinking specifically of one guy in our class who really, came to Monaco with a specific goal of working for a specific family office and living in Monaco after having a very successful career at large multinationals. And I think the program just completely and perfectly sort of enabled him to do this. I don't think it's a prerequisite to have a finance background. I think it would certainly help, because if you have 0 finance background, I think the program would move very fast for you, but it's not undoable. It's very much, and the program also caters to people who have very diverse backgrounds. So that's definitely not a problem. In terms of an admission process, I think it's very similar to any other university, really. You fill in an application. I think there are 1 or 2 maybe essay questions, and then if you proceed to the next round, it's a interview, which I think could either be in person or mine was remote via video. Monaco is, I think it's 4 square kilometers in size. So I didn't live in Monaco. My apartment was in Beausoleil, which is just on the border, which meant, I still walked to university every day, but I lived in France, which is much more affordable, for sure. I think the south of France per se is not an extremely expensive place. If you stay outside of Monaco, you can do lots of fun things. And there's also lots of fun things to do in Monaco that costs zero money, right? It's beautiful. There are lots of roads where you can walk or run, or there are lots of very, very nice small restaurants around the place that you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for. But yeah, so Monaco itself, it's an expensive place, of course, but you can get by, I would say, on a sort of average budget for sure. In terms of what Monaco meant to me personally was, yeah, hard skills, and it gave me a network and sort of a platform from where I could, market myself to people, and then eventually obtain the job that I wanted. So I think, in summary, I would say ROI for me personally was fantastic, definitely worth it, and I think it worked out, I would say, better than I had anticipated before going there.